Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The fellas predicting Michigan's depth chart heading into spring practice. And Dill, we've gone back and forth a few times on some of our projected starters. Guess we're going to settle the difference today. And obviously, this is subject to change after coming out of spring practice, after getting some eyes on the spring game. But going into spring practice, the boys put together their own depth charts heading into the 2024 year. Super excited to get into it. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. A special shout out to the Michigan fans. Y'all know this is our team. We love talking about this team, and the amount of support you guys have shown the boys truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And more importantly, if y'all disagree with some of our depth chart predictions, let us know in the comment section. We'll chop it up. Again, there is a lot of different ways you could go about building this depth chart. Dill, quite frankly, the chart I have in front of me, I'm not even sure if I wake up maybe a week from now and I might be tinkering around with it as well. Without further ado, let's get into this one. And Dill, let's start with the quarterback spot. And we don't need to go that far in depth because we've already talked about this quarterback battle plenty over the last couple of weeks, and we're going to talk about it plenty over the next couple of weeks. Dill, quarterback one heading into 2024, who you got?
I think it's going to be Orgy, and I don't think they're even going to bring in another guy in the spring. I feel like I hear a lot of talk about that transfer portal quarterbacks. I don't know, just my whole vibe, and this might be a little like Instagram sleuthing and such, but just the way Alex Orgy, who he's throwing to, how he's trained, I just think he's going to be the guy. He carries himself like the guy, and I hope he does win.
I have Alex Orgy too, and for a little bit of a different reason. I'm not necessarily going the Instagram route, but I'm going more of how does Sherrone Moore want this offense to look, and that is we want to run the football. When Sherrone Moore's calling the plays, we ran the ball 60% of our offensive snaps, and you ask what quarterback best unlocks this Michigan run game. I mean, it's got to be Alex Orgy, and I have a feeling if Alex Orgy is your starting quarterback, you're going to see some two running back sets, right? Khalil Mullings, Donnie Edwards in the backfield. That's really exciting. I think a lot of Michigan fans are very excited about the ceiling Alex Orgy has as a quarterback. Phenomenal athleticism. Jack Tuttle, the safest option. Jaden Donegal, a guy that you saw some really nice things from in that Nebraska game and a few other spot duty reps that he got. I'm excited to see how this quarterback battle shakes out, but I do have Alex Orgy as my quarterback one. Dill, getting into the running back room, and I'm going to go a little off the beaten trail here. Running back one, I guess we'll define this as what running back gets the most amount of carries at the end of the 2024 year. And I'm going to go with Khalil Mullings. And this is tough because I think Donnie Edwards is going to be used a lot in this offense, but in some different ways, right? You go back to when Kirk Campbell called the game against East Carolina. The first rep Donovan Edwards took in that game was as a slot receiver getting a screen. Donovan Edwards is not going anywhere as a feature in this offense. In fact, I think he's going to get a lot more work heading into 2024, but the running back that gets the most amount of work as a running back, Dylan, I'm going with Khalil Mullings because I think the ceiling for what Khalil can do as a running back, extremely exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that might be true. Khalil might just take more of the carries. I do wonder, though, I mean, will the snap counts be that much different, or even Donovan's might be a little higher just because he'll be on the field more in those passing situations. And I would be interested to see if they use him a little different and they be a little more creative just in general. Because, I mean, when you watch that Washington game, it's like Donovan Edwards needs to touch the football more. I mean, he is the guy who makes big plays. He's been really the only one for the past couple of years who's made him in those big moments, made him relatively consistently in those big moments. I mean, there's part of me that thinks, again, Khalil Mullings might be the best down-to-down back for Michigan just in terms of his run style. But, man, if Michigan's going to get a little more creative and start trying to be a little more explosive, I think Donovan Edwards has to be a huge part of that.
So you danced around that question. Who you got as your starting running back?
I think Donovan Edwards probably going to take more snaps. That's what I'll say. I don't think he'll take more carries. I think he'll be on the field more.
Closing argument for Khalil Mullings is, 4.2 yards after contact last year, a guy that I think is still trending in the right direction, and that's not normally how you talk about a redshirt senior. This is a guy that played linebacker for his first 3 years at Michigan, really began to make the transition in that 2022 year. Last year was really his first full-time playing running back. I think there's still a lot of juice left to be squeezed in terms of Khalil Mullings being a running back. getting a better feel for how to run the football, reading your blocks, seeing what's in front of you. And Dill, you look at how Sherrone Moore wants to run this football. Like he wants 4 or 5 yards a carry, right? We want to stay on schedule. We want to be physically imposing. What better way to be physically imposing than having a former linebacker running the rock for this
and
Michigan
I get
offense?
that, but I also think like Kirk Campbell has maybe a different outlook on how he's going to call plays.
Agreed.
And I'm not saying Michigan's going to go to like this like air raid pass happy scheme, but I don't know that it'll be as much like, I mean, again, there were moments where Michigan felt like they were beating their head into the wall in games where they just kept trying to run it, even when teams are crowding it. I do think Kirk Campbell might try to get a little more creative, might try to open things up. And if that is the direction of the play calling at all, Donovan Edwards is going to be a huge focal point.
And I'm definitely not getting up here and saying Donnie Edwards is not going to be a focal point in this offense. Now, I think you can make that argument for both the running back spot and the quarterback spot. Like, what does this offense want to look like heading into 2024? That probably goes a long way in determining who's your starting quarterback as well. Moving to the wide receivers, Dill, I'm actually going to straight up agree with this depth chart. Tyler Morris, Freddie Moore, your boundary wide receivers, and Samaj Morgan as your slot. I think that makes the most sense. I'm extremely excited about all three of those guys, all relatively young, right? 2 of them going into their second year, Tyler Morris going into his third year. Now, a little caveat there. I listed 3 wide receivers. I think you're going to see Michigan running a lot of 12 personnel. So I'm going to have 2 starting tight ends as well. But my 3 wide receivers that get the most work, Tyler Morris, Freddie Moore, Samaj Morgan.
Yeah, and I don't see how any of us on the outside could like make much of it.
Yes.
Those are the guys you've seen. Again,
I think
Carmelo,
Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan are probably going to start, and I think Frederick Moore battling with a guy like Peyton O'Leary, who's a little bit of a veteran, but you heard him dominate in spring and fall camp last year, and obviously Carmelo English, a very exciting prospect as well.
And that's why I was like, I don't know how you could think it'd be anyone other than Freddie Moore, just because Freddie Moore actually did play last year when they brought in that kind of second round of guys. It usually was the Frederick Moore. Again, Carmelo English didn't come in early last year. I don't believe, I could be wrong on that, but I think he didn't come in early, and that could be a part of what's going on.
Yep.
I mean, he was the higher ranked guy. Who knows? Just
Yeah,
hard.
there were a few scout like recruiting service that were really high on Carmelo English. That's a position that we'll see work out, but I think at the end of the day, like I think we're going to play a lot of 2 wide receiver sets because you look at this tight end room. I mean, you got the best tight end in the country in Colston Loveland. I think a really interesting conversation is who emerges as that second tight end. You look for the last couple of years, I mean, both tight ends in this Michigan offense, going back to Scooney and Colston Loveland in 2022, have gotten a lot of work. Dill, Marlon Klein, a guy that's getting a lot of offseason buzz, which I think what's exciting for him, he's a guy that, I mean, played youth ball in Germany, came over to Georgia, played his senior year, a guy that came in at 6'6", 215. You knew there was a lot of work. You knew he wasn't a guy that was going to step on the field and play right away. He's up to 245. He's a very big body. I think that run blocking ability certainly going in the right direction with the size that he brings. I think you might be looking at a little bit of a breakout season at that tight end spot.
Yeah, no, people keep talking about him, and the names being brought up, and he does look the part. I mean, huge, looks athletic, looks good for. So it'll be interesting to see, and I wouldn't mind seeing because they used a ton of it last year with Barner and Colston. Obviously, Colston will still be the guy. He'll probably be on the field pretty much every play. But it will be interesting to see if he makes some more because, again, Michigan does like to go too, especially if they
I'm really excited to see if Marlon emerges as like that dominant road grader run blocker, you know, because at 6'7", like what if he gets up to 255? And again, you said it, functional athlete for his size. You're going to get asked to block a lot as a tight end in this Michigan offense. I think he's probably best suited for it. Now, I would throw out some of those dark horses coming in as true freshmen, Hogan Hansen and Brady Prescorn. Are they physically going to be ready to run block in a Michigan offense? It's probably the question that you have there. Moving to the offensive line, a unit that I think a lot of casual college football fans just kind of writing this Michigan offensive line out. You lose, 6 guys to the NFL. This is going to be a really good offensive line. Dill, I'll kick it to you first. Your starting 5 up front. I guess you can go from left tackle to right tackle.
So I think I will have Gentry, El Hadi, Crippen. I think Raheem Anderson's going to be the guy at right guard, and I really want to see it because he's been one of the guys who's been grinding out in the program for a long time. Will be a senior by now. I mean, he looks like looks ready to rock and roll there. And then I kind of agree with Miles Hinton. Obviously, he's kind of the one guy you've seen. No, he played pretty good last year. Obviously, it was a pretty big battle at those tackle spots, and he was right there. So I'm sure he'll be in it. And I really want to see
I
Raheem.
think the lock that you have is Miles Hinton at right tackle. And I think the rest of the conversation, I feel really good about Andrew Gentry at left tackle. And coming back from the mission, this was a guy that was really coveted out of high school. Massive win for Michigan on the recruiting trail. He checks every physical trait that you want in a starting left tackle. I think the feet and the athleticism, the functional athleticism is coming along. I agree with both those tackles on the inside. El Hadi Crippen, Dill, I got Raheem Anderson too. And he's a guy that's a little bit of me Instagram sleuth in there. I see the body. I see what he's done over the last couple of years. You see Josh Preet from Northwestern. I went back and got a few games in. I mean, that's a solid floor guy. Like if he's trotting out there starting for Michigan day one of 2024, I feel fine about him starting at one of those guard spots. I just think Raheem Anderson probably has a little bit of a higher ceiling than a guy like Josh Preet. I'm definitely not counting him out as a starter. Moving to the defensive side of the football, Dale, this defensive line conversation, I guess I'll ask you your starting four. I think that's pretty obvious, but then I'm going to ask you to throw in a guy that you think emerges as a key rotational piece for Michigan in 2024.
I mean, I think Trey Pierce is going to play a lot more than I think people think. You kind of saw some moments last year, not a super high-ranked recruit. Obviously, it's kind of down to us in Wisconsin, I think, but I think he's going to play a lot. I think he's going to be good. And that is kind of the one spot. You're kind of looking, Rayshon Benny, obviously going to be very much in the mix, came on big last year, but you're kind of looking at that second, who's going to be that second defensive tackle, or second defensive tackle in the second unit, if you will. I think it's going to be Trey Pierce. I kind of like what you look like. Again, if he just takes that physical, like some of those physical steps, I think he's play good ball.
Yeah, I think that's the key question here, right? Your starters, that's arguably the best defensive line that you see in the country, right? Derek Moore, Josiah Stewart, and then Kenny Grant, Mason Graham on the inside. I'm going to double down and go with Rayshon Benny too. This is a guy that you saw the flashes, obviously got hurt towards the end of the year, and this is a much more important conversation than I think a lot of Michigan fans probably realize, and that is, what does the depth on that defensive line look like? Nobody is questioning the first line talent here, right? That is one of, if not the best defensive line of group of four guys that you see in the country. You think back to how much Michigan rotated those guys, right? Chris Jenkins playing a lot, Cam Good playing a lot. Obviously, Braden McGregor, Jalen Harrell played a lot as well. They like to rotate. I think the bigger storyline here is, what does the two deep look like for that Michigan defensive line? Because you look at that first team defensive line, not many questions there. Linebacker room, I think much of the same, right? Jayshon Barham, Ernest Hausman, which I'm really excited for both of these guys, right? The thing that gets lost in the conversation is both of these guys only going into year 3 of their college football careers, both of which have played a lot of football their first 2 years. Year 3 is normally when you see that breakout performance, especially with guys that have gotten their feet wet during those first 2 years. Both these linebackers, extremely high upside heading into year 3. I think that rounds out a very strong room.
Yeah, Jayshon Barham really, I feel like, fits what Michigan's going to want to do. I mean, just in terms of how versatile he is, you can kind of stick him on the defensive line, play at that edge spot, do a really good job there. I just think, again, the way Wink Martindale's done it in the pros, it's been, you need guys who can play in a variety of different positions. I think Jayshon Barham really exemplifies that. I'm looking forward to see what he can do.
I would like to double down on that. Jayshon Barham, and you go back to look at how much we blitzed Junior Colson and Mikey Barrett last year. Like, they want to send heat from those linebackers. Jayshon Barham is a phenomenal blitzer. One, he's a phenomenal athlete for his size, but really, really good blitzer, a high pass rush win rate, was able to garner a lot of quarterback carries. That's probably what I'm most excited for, is how we use Jayshon Barham at that linebacker spot. Now, Dill, this is where we're going to disagree, right? We haven't had a ton of disagreements yet. Going to the secondary, let's start with our boundary cornerbacks, and then we're going to work into where it really gets hairy, those safeties in that nickel room.
Yeah, I mean, Will Johnson's obviously going to be starting, and then I think it's going to be Jair Hill. I think Jair Hill, you just looked, he moves the right way, I think, for cornerback. DJ Waller is kind of an interesting one, a little bit bigger, a little stockier, moves pretty good, but I think he'll take a couple more years, or not a couple more years, but a longer time to get rolling than Jair Hill, just because think Jair Hill's a far more smooth, polished athlete right now.
I'm with you there. I obviously Will Johnson, Jay Hill, but I've heard a lot of DJ Waller hype in the comment section, and I'm with it. Like, I think that you look at what you want going into spring practice. You want this kind of competition, right? Whether it's Jair Hill, whether it's DJ Waller winning the job, like, you feel pretty good about whoever's starting opposite Will Johnson heading into 2024. Now, the safety spot, this is where I threw in my wrinkle, right? Makari Page, Rod Moore, I think you're starting safeties. And there's been a lot of chatter about Rod Moore maybe kicking down to nickel. In my personal opinion, leave him back at safety. What makes Rod Moore so special in this Michigan defense is the instincts and the how comfortable he is playing in the back end of the defense. I don't want to change that up. Like, you have an All-American safety in Rod Moore. Don't go playing games with him moving to nickel. Now, my nickel spot, I think you're going to go Jaden McBurrows. Hate to blow up your spot. I'm going to go Zeke Berry. Why I'm going Zeke Berry is I think the ceiling for Zeke Berry is extraordinarily high. I go back and watch some of that high school film. That's kind of where he played in high school. He's a guy that wants to be around the line of scrimmage, get his nose in the run game. Jaden McBurrows, I think, is a very, very good nickel. But you talk about the high upside candidate to win that nickel role, a guy that can do a lot of different things, blitz off the edge, be a hammer in the run game. I think it's Zeke Berry. And you go back to what made Mikey Sandstrel so special, not only an elite nickel in terms of covering, very good tackler, a guy that could blitz. I think Zeke Berry is the guy that probably checks those boxes. So I'm going to go Zeke Berry. He's probably the guy that I'm paying attention to most as the spring practice notes start to come out.
See, that's where, I mean, I think what really made Mike Sanderson the best is he just had an innate sense of where he was supposed to be. And when you play in that Michigan nickel role, you need to be really comfortable playing a variety of different ways. You got to be able to cover in man. You got to be able to play cover in zone. You got to be able to blitz. You got to be able to tackle. You got to be able to do all of it. I think you've seen Jaden McBurrows' really good kind of cornerback skills obviously came in at that position. Maybe not the long speed to play on the boundary, but I think really set well to play in that nickel role. Yeah. I think it just his innate sense of playing, like how many years he's been in the defense. I think that
the body type certainly fits too. Like, yeah, right, a little bit shorter, but very good short area quick. So that is kind of what Mikey Sandstrom made him special. And I think it's probably the similar conversation that you have with some others, where Jaden McBurrows is probably the high floor guy. You trot him out as a nickel, and you have a pretty good feeling he's going to be a damn good nickel for Michigan in 2024. I think the more exciting proposition is if Zeke Berry wins that job. I think, one, because of the fact that he beat out Jaden McBurrows, that's exciting. But more importantly, I do think Zeke Berry, from an athleticism standpoint, has a little bit more juice to him. And that's why I think it'd be exciting to see Zeke Berry playing. That's going to be the challenge here. The challenge isn't, do we have enough guys to have a good secondary? The challenge is we have so many guys that can do so many different things. How are we going to put this puzzle piece together? Really exciting proposition for Coach Wink and the defensive staff. Again, very excited to see how the depth chart plays out. We'll circle back to this post-spring practice, and then we'll obviously be talking about it plenty in the fall. Really excited. Appreciate you guys rocking with the boys. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.